Welcome back to the development tank, guys. Straight into it today. We've got site insiders. If you know, you know. With Gavin, we've got a site that we didn't buy. What were the red flags that meant we didn't buy this site? Previous episodes, we've shown you guys a lot of the ones we bought and why. We didn't buy this one. Why didn't we? And we've got Claire coming in after that. Tender tactics. It's a 3-part series. Last week was the first episode. This week's the second episode. Next week will be the third. If you don't know how to get your build tender right, this is the series you need. Tender tactics with Claire coming up after that. And before I let you go, guys, and we get into site insiders with Gav, quick one from me. RBA, they keep the rates on hold last week. Nothing surprising there. It's what everyone was expecting. Are we getting closer to that cut? Yes, I think so. I think people are diving into the commentary from the RBA. You know, obviously things are staying on hold and they may do so the next couple of meetings, but it's about the commentary. And the commentary sounds like, yes, they are like a dog with a bone with this inflation. They're going to keep their foot on the neck, and we just need to keep seeing those numbers come down. So if those numbers keep coming down, we're definitely getting closer to that cut, guys. So stay tuned. We'll keep you in the loop as it comes to hand. Let's get into it. Site insiders, if you know, you know. Welcome back, site insiders. If you know, you know. This one's all about red flags. How are you, Gav?
Yeah, good yourself?
Good. This one, like I said to our amazing community, red flags. This one had a couple, and I'd love to unpack the work you did, we did, and why we passed on it.
Yeah, look, I love coming to you every week. Every week it feels like I say, we've got such a cracking site this week, knocked it out of the park, and the truth is, we really only buy great sites. But what people probably don't realise that behind that, there's probably 100 plus sites that I look at every day that are either, typically a dead duck before they get to us. And then there's also, a series of processes that I go through that we talk about, a lot of check boxes that we like to tick if we can. And then we sort of progressively close in, and then we get the conversation started with the vendor or the selling agent, and just sort of really challenge it towards the end. And in this case, it was a site, it's actually in Caulfield South.
Yeah, I think, Gav, that's a great point, because week in, week out, we come here with the crackers that we've bought. You're probably not far wrong. You discard 80 to 100 and without doing work on them, scrolling past them on REA, having agents send them to you. But yeah, I think it's a good lesson for everyone to learn that it feels like, I feel like every time we come here and deliver another great site and another, I guess, success story on site acquisitions, it feels like we're shooting fish in a barrel, but it's simply not like that. There's a lot we have to go through, a lot of hard work. So yeah, excited for you to get into this one and let people in on that process that we go through, and letting people in on one that didn't make the mark, which there's plenty of them.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, other people out there who are interested in development or are developing, it's really, you're looking at the risks and you're looking for the problems.
That's what you're looking for.
So, it's good to go through a process to illustrate things that we pick up on. So this is a site in Caulfield South. We do like Caulfield South, not too far from where we do a lot of work anyway. This particular site is 2 Nelson Street in Caulfield South. So just having a quick look here at Land Checker, find out where we are. We're about 10 kilometres from the city, so probably a little bit closer to the city. Well, it's definitely closer to the city from over the fence there in McKinnon and Bentley East. So yeah, proximity to the city, proximity to St Kilda, Albert Park Lake. If you're that way inclined, you can get up to the Cool Kids in South Yarra. But you're a lot closer to all of that action. Now, just coming in here, one of the things that really sort of got our attention...
And these are probably the reasons why it did get as far as it did with us, Gav, I suppose. Like you said, that proximity to the city, look at that green reserve there. So, yeah, we're definitely not running through one that was just straight red flags. It was one that got to our desk, we put in the work, we thought we're getting close, but then didn't come to be. But, yeah, great little location as we look at it there.
All right, now let's just... zoom in on the site here and get a bit more information. So 640 square metres.
Beautiful.
good frontage, 16.5 metre frontage. We're in Glen Ira, so look, no sort of restrictive side setback guidelines to work around. High res here, so we were a little concerned about a tree and getting our second crossover here on the southern end. Did some measurements, went down there with a tape measure and spoke to our arborist, and he was pretty comfortable that we would get the second crossover in there. Setback's okay, and nothing really to be concerned about in relation to private open space. It's not too bad. There was a little bit of shadowing here and there, and I think our designer did suggest
the designer gave it the tick, but also I think the 16.5 metre frontage just gives you enough to get your shadowing out of the way of those neighbours. So yeah, it was a tick on that one, but yeah, definitely one to watch on this one, I think.
Yeah, so look, all good stuff. You know, that plus the park being here at the end of your street.
It's a good development site, Gav.
That's right. So we were all about it. But as we dug a bit deeper, it was actually off market. So it came to us off market. They were originally talking 2.2 mil, which we just felt was a little bit too heavy.
Yeah.
We managed to we got the conversation going with the vendor, to an elderly gentleman who's owned it for years, doesn't owe him anything. He's got a couple of people living in there, and I don't think there's a whole lot of money involved there. So it's not a major concern for him, but he was interested in seeing what it'd be worth and moving it on if he could get the right number. So we managed to get it down to around 2,050,000, I think we sort of ended up before we pulled the pin. But with that number, we were needing resales around the 2.6 mil. So that was sort of one of the first things that we were a bit worried about, and we'll have a look at some comps in a sec. But the other thing here is that community centre just here. So that's 2 levels.
Yeah, it looks 2-story, Gav. Casting a bit of a shadow there as we look at it.
Yeah, there's a few windows around the edges here. It's a religious centre. In that context, it probably wouldn't be a late night venue in any respect at all. So that's not a major concern. But on the weekends, when they have functions on there, you can imagine it being very, very busy. No parking whatsoever on the weekends. That combined with the park. Also, you've got a lawn bowls club just here as well. So if you've got a function on at the community centre, and you've got a lawn bowls day, you can imagine it would be pretty crazy.
It could be pretty busy. And if that is 2-story, that looks quite close to that private open space of the right-hand side townhouse there. So,
yeah, that's right.
You just can't help but think if I'm standing where your cursor is right there in the backyard, and that is 2-story, that's what I'm looking at. And yeah, that's something that does, slide into our calculations, isn't it?
Definitely.
Those feels of the backyard, as we know with this townhouse development stuff, your backyards can be, they can be, half of that can be 8 by 6 metres, 8 by 7 metres. So you can have your sort of 50, 60 square metres of backyard there, and it's nice to be looking out to sky and sort of, I guess, clear areas if you can help it. So, that just was a little chink in the armour.
You're right. And the thing is as well, you've got the northerly sun, which comes over this area here. So that's going to cast a shadow in the afternoons. Add to that, when you're standing in the backyard, as you say, it can be quite imposing. Now, if it's a little bit much for us, then you can guarantee in a couple of years' time, when you've got a beautiful townhouse there with a nice backyard, and the buyer thinks, how good is this? And then they walk in the backyard and they look up at the building, they'll probably think the same thing we did. Yeah,
correct. And I think that's just, if it's something you can see now, and it's just about minimising these little chinks. If it's there now, it's going to be there in 2 years, and you've gone through the blood, sweat and tears to get amazing townhouses there. And if it is a little chink in your armour, it will be a question mark for buyers. Ultimately, you want to minimise as many question marks for that buyer when they go to that new townhouse at the end. So, spot on, Gav. It's not going anywhere, and it's going to be there front and centre when you finish these townhouses.
Yeah, and look, also, like I said, I went down there, I walked around, I walked the park, I put myself into the situation if I was a buyer looking at a townhouse there. And I did also notice that, look, although there's some good family homes in and around this pocket, there wasn't a lot of new development, not a lot of new homes, not a lot of sort of, new buildings. So
renovated homes.
Right. So it's not like it wasn't run down or horrible, but it just wasn't a lot of construction going on in the area, which sort of gives you that impression of, a new sort of feel to the location. We had some solid comps, but they were over on these streets here, in this sort of pocket here, and you would probably argue that it's a slightly better location in relation to just the orientation to your northly facing backyards, and also you still got proximity to the park.
Yeah, and I think they're nicer streets through there from memory. It's a bit more tree lined, and the architecture is a bit nicer through there. So yeah, okay. So it's starting to show wobbly signs, Gav, as far as whether we move forward with it or not. Take us to our Fisher's Feasos. We've renamed the segment for you, Fischer. So this is the Feaso that you were working towards. Show us where you think it started to go wrong.
Well, I think in this area here, families do look for bigger houses. So although we could have got maybe even slightly bigger on it, we went for 30 squares rather than 28. We sort of put an extra room in it, if you like. So a bit more space. You got your $2,050,000 there, which was sort of the asking price at the time. Got our standard planning costs in there, project management fee. The build cost, we had it about $28,000 a square.
So we sort of dialed it back from your dailies and these ones that people would have been seeing in previous episodes. So, yeah, okay, yep.
Yeah, look, a basic build, you're probably looking at around 24.5 to 25. So we definitely got some more money in it, no doubt. But, we haven't allowed any pulls, and it's not up around that 30 plus mark where you can really add some nice bespoke features. Moving down there, you can see there, we've had the sales at around 2.6, but if you could sell them for 2.6, 17% is probably a good return, $730,000 net profit. But we were really struggling to get comps that we were comfortable with in that location for 2.6.
So I guess, where would you think we were? We've got realistic, pessimistic and optimistic. I remember the combos. We were probably comfortably maybe around the pessimistic, or maybe a touch below the pessimistic in the resales, would you say?
That'd be fair. You're probably looking at between 2.4 and 2.5.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind, we're doing 30 square townhouses, great backyards, a little bit of money in the build. So they're not average townhouses. They'll come out great. Yeah. But, I just think that the comps and as you say, the red flags that not only we see, but potential buyers will see as well. And that'll probably keep it to about that sort of 2.45 mark.
Yeah, correct. And I agree. And I think even, say, looking at the build, to put a bit more into the build, obviously then you need to justify more in your resales. And I feel like I'd like to put a little bit more in the build and just get a bit nicer. But you're still probably around that pessimistic, which putting more in the build is just taking more off your bottom line. So like you say, probably just too many red flags. The ROI is just not there where we like it. And I think the sites that we move forward on, and the sites that we've spoken about in the last sort of half a dozen episodes, these things stack up. We feel like, because when we're doing this, it's speculation. There's a lot of speculation. It's, your buy price, your build prices, your resales, all these things are speculative. So you need that bit of room in it. So you need to do your numbers. The numbers don't lie, but you need to nearly have the feels that, hey, we don't feel like we're pushing this. We don't feel like, we're having to justify it. We don't feel like we're having to argue it too hard. Like when you and I are in the boardroom looking at these sites, if we're having to draw really long bows and try and draw a really long line between certain comparables, it just doesn't feel right. So, and that's where I feel like this one was heading compared to some others that we've spoken about recently.
Definitely. Look, if it was in a slightly better location over on the streets we mentioned earlier, and we were trying to hit 2.6, it probably would have been a real push just to achieve it over there in a slightly better location. But in this spot, 2.6 was just a bridge too far.
Yeah, correct. I feel like, and that's the thing, we're super bullish about these sort of Glen Ira, Caulfield type locations. But I think you take that, you keep it in the immediate location, you get rid of the community centre, you turn it north facing private open space. And I think we're nearly dealing on that, right. But that's just enough for us to turn away from it. And I think, for anyone playing along at home, I think the best way to to figure out if the site's right is to go find some other sites. Go find, and as you know, in here, guys, we're looking at sites all the time. So instantly when we started going deep with this one, we started to go, okay, great, a client can buy this. We're not feeling it. What else can we buy? And very quickly, we found other sites that we went, hold on, great, apples for apples, pound for pound, you're better. Yeah. So then that helps you actually decipher when you start comparing. That helps you decipher and see it a bit clearly, because if you've got the blinkers on and you are looking at the one site, it can get a bit polarizing and it can become the only thing. But step away a bit, put some more sites in there, challenge them against each other, and the best one will win out. And this one didn't.
That's right, and that's exactly what happened with the site. Is that we found something that was just better, and it made it look better. No matter how much you dress this up, that community centre is always going to be there. That it's always going to be very, very busy on the weekends. So it doesn't matter how much you try, you can't change those fundamentals. Yeah, love it, Gav. Well, thanks for bringing one that we didn't move forward with, that had red flags. I think a lot of value in that. We will sprinkle a few more of these through because there's no shortage of them, that's for sure. I think there, in some cases, more learnings coming out of sites like this than the ones that we pick up because they're just a slam dunk. Yeah, correct. And I think teaching people and helping people identify what we avoid, I think can nearly, like you say, teach them more and bring them further along, teaching them what to avoid rather than, hey, that's the golden goose, which we brought a few of those to the table in the last couple of weeks. But for these reasons, this is why we've walked away. And I think you always need to be able to walk away. There's always going to be more sites. Yeah, and it's very rare that you find a site that ticks all the boxes. Correct. Just, spot on, Gav. Thanks for that, mate. We will see you next week. Hopefully you're cooking up a couple of deals and hopefully you can bring a fresh one to us next week. I look forward to it. See you, Gav. See you, everyone. Peace out. Here we go, guys. Tender tactics. So CK's back in here. Claire, head of projects at Little Fish. We've got her back up from downstairs. It's the second part of the 3-part series, Tender Tactics. So revert back to next week. We set up the tender. We sent the tenders out. We set the tender up for success. Now we're up to post-tender clarifications, Claire.
That's it.
Welcome back. Super excited, this little series. Anyone playing along at home, if you wrap up these 3 series, they've been posted in a row, if you can go through them, you're going to be pretty much bulletproof. This is what we do inside this building. So you need to go through these, go through them multiple times, learn them, because this is what we do here. So do it. Looking at you, Fish. Claire, thanks for coming back up. Excited. This is part 2 of your 3-part series.
Thanks for having me. That is a good segue, Peter. Let's assume it's been 4 weeks and you've set up your tender correctly. Like you said, it means the 4 builders we went out to, they've all responded, they've submitted their trade breakdowns, they haven't pulled out. You've got essentially 4 great prices, maybe high and low, but in a format that you can start to review and compare.
Yeah, great. And I think the fact that, I guess, going back to last week's episode, the fact that you put the work in, getting the right builders, getting motivated builders, getting committed builders to put in their price means that 4 weeks down the track, you've got your gold. You've got your 4 tenders submitted in your format, ready to be compared.
Yeah, you haven't wasted time, so to speak. I think I said last week that it can happen if you don't put that early work in and you just send it out hoping something's going to come back. If you don't sort of give it that love, then don't expect those builders to either.
Yeah, great point. Now, so you've got your pricing back. Have you got any tips? I think we're all guilty of this. I think we all just scroll down and look at the bottom line. Have you got any tips on gauging where you think the price is based on where the pricing comes back just in that initial stage?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I definitely scroll down and look at the figures to begin with. But let's say we get 4 prices back. If they're all sitting in between 5 to 10% of each other, that's probably going to tell you, regardless of what your feasibility or what your estimate was a year ago, that's pretty, you should be pretty confident, I should say, that that's your market value for your build. I mean, there's probably always maybe going to be a cheaper builder if you search long and hard, but whether or not they're pricing your exact product and what you want, and they're the right builder for your build, that's another thing. But I would say if you've picked those 4 builders, they work in the area, they're providing the level of build you want, and they're all sitting within 5 to 10%. Keep in mind 10% variance is quite big when we're talking $1.5 million, but it can be worked with, and it gives you confidence that you're getting a good product or a similar product, and it's fair.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think, a lot of people potentially could be just looking for the cheapest, or, especially in recent times, build prices and the cost of things has gone up dramatically. So, sometimes feasibilities can be out. So I think it's important that, like you say, you've done the work, you get the 4 prices back, and if they are in that 5 to 10% range, hey guys, this is where you're going to end up. Make no mistake. Unless you dramatically change the fabric of the project and that sort of thing, make no mistake, this is where you're going to end up. And if you have got maybe an outlier that is quite cheap, it's probably a red flag, would you say?
Yeah, well, that's true. So if you did have an outlier that was significantly lower, it's easy to be drawn to. Like we've all done it. I've had clients who will say, let's work with that builder. The reality is there's something wrong with it. If we're talking, say, 300K lower than the other 3, for example, so maybe 30%, 25% lower, they've either priced it to their own spec, they've excluded items, maybe they've left out an obvious one is like hardscaping and softscaping at the end. Maybe they've left that one out. Maybe they've done their own value management items included within their build price. So there's definitely a red flag, in short.
Yeah, great. And I think what we're about to dive into hopefully will help decipher where a builder might be missing, or a builder might be light or might be heavy, which will then even hone that pricing formula and process even more.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not that we disregard the low price altogether, but the key is to bring them up to a point that you're comfortable with them, because they still might end up being the best price and the most competitive. They're not to be disregarded, but definitely need work.
Yep. Yeah, great.
So what if we dive into the spreadsheet that we use here? So we use this downstairs, and similar to last week, this is a part of the masterclass.
Yeah, spot on. It is part of the masterclass. So these are the resources that you will get inside the Little Fish Network and in the masterclass specifically to give you the tools to succeed in your own development.
So jumping into this spreadsheet, we have used Summit Av as an example, which a few weeks ago you've spoken about now, but I did touch on it last week. So essentially, this is a way to compare apples with apples. The idea is, like we said, the builder submits their trade breakdown that you've provided them. So they're all very similar. And then it's just about putting in your data next to each other to start looking at the prices let's call it per trade. Yeah. So to make this simple, I've just highlighted a few different ones that stood out for this particular build. And I should say that there was probably a lot more detail went in, but this is just high level to give you an idea and a starting point, I guess. So something to point out, let's have a look. External louvers and screens, we've got a price missing for builder 3. So something important to look out for here is when, say, 3 out of 4 builders all have a price for one item, but one builder hasn't. This should then allow you to start populating your clarifications for these builders. So from here, I'm going builder 3, please confirm external louvers and screens have been allowed for and provide details. Potentially it is under something else, but that's a clear point where you go, I'm not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, I think, and how good's this? Obviously you guys deal with these day to day downstairs. I deal with them, in these spreadsheets less, but you can instantly see, and for people following along, you can instantly see and pick up that anomaly. where if you're not dealing with a spreadsheet like this, to be going through each proposal that has been set up differently from each builder, to try and pick apart who's allowed what and where it is sitting and which trade it's sitting, to get them filling in your own spreadsheet allows you easily to identify that something's been missed. And like you say, do those clarifications. And yeah, I'm just feeling once you do those clarifications and do a round of clarifications, like things are gonna be pretty tight.
That's the key, is try and weed out everything before we get to that contract stage.
Yeah. And also, sorry to cut you off, but I think for builders quoting, like how good for them to be able to get that clarity and get that feedback, instead of maybe poor old builder 3 hasn't allowed it, he's missed it. Maybe he gets awarded the job, and then finds out that he hasn't allowed for something he should have allowed for, or on the other part, a builder's allowed too much for something, and you've been able to send that clarification out to them and say, geez, you're high in this area. He revisits it. He's pressed 2 times 2 instead of times 1, or made a mistake, and then allows him the opportunity to put his best foot forward again. Love it.
Yeah, and it's not about going through, I suppose the smaller differences shouldn't be too much of a concern. The bigger differences are, but it's certainly not about going through each builder and going, hey, well, this builder can do plastering for 63,000 and you can do it for 68,000. I want you to be at 63. It's not about that. It's more about just finding any red flags and any scope gaps, really.
Yeah.
Or anything that has been, like you said, completely doubled up.
Yeah, and if another builder's, 50%, 100% more than another builder, you can't help but think they're allowing to do something crazy, or the other guy's hasn't allowed for half the job.
Exactly. So the bigger differences are definitely what we look out for. I suppose another good example is here, garage doors. While we've got one builder that has no allowance, my take is that garage doors would not be missed by a builder. It'll be somewhere else. But then you've got, say, builder 3, who's provided circa 8K for garage doors, and we've got nearly triple for the other 2 builders who are very close. So that tells you that builder 3 potentially has allowed for their own spec for a garage door, because if the other 2 builders are costing them 25 grand circa, 8 grand's not possible.
Yeah.
Any trade is not going to give someone that big of a discount.
Yeah, I like it. And then you've got, because that's the thing, I think deep down, they're all pricing the same thing. So ultimately, and they'll all have different trades, they'll all have different suppliers, so they've all got the variances in the way they operate from a material and labour point of view. But yeah, like you say, to be 300% more is definitely, I guess, a red flag. And I guess a clarification for builder 3 would be, please confirm you've allowed what's been specified.
Exactly.
Yeah, great.
And that's it's going back to that, even though, yes, we want the most economical price and you want to make money on your development, you also want the right product, and you don't want to get to contract stage and start building and have variations.
Oh, 100%. And the thing is, as we know in property development, the product can make you a lot of money. It can cost you a lot of money. So protecting the product is paramount. So a great tool to make sure you're getting what you want.
Exactly. And then you've seen, obviously, everyone's probably seen a bit of a theme here, but I've got another example, joinery. We've got 3 prices. They spread a little bit, but they're all, we're all thinking that the joinery is about $150,000 package. This builder might be a bit high. Again, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Some people they have different trade relationships. They've got different joiners. Potentially at their time of pricing, they only got 1 price back. They might get 2 more by the time you wrap this contract up. But this is the one that we would highlight for this trade, is that you've got builder 1 who has half the joinery allowance to the other builders.
Yeah, correct. And I think that's not something to get excited about, thinking that, hey, wow, geez, they're well priced. They've got a sharp pencil. I think that's, like you say, it's identifying that that's a red flag. And when you do get to joinery stage, you're going to be underwhelmed with whatever builder one is allowing and bringing to the table with 75,000. So, another good example.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. There's times where you've queried something or we've queried something and the builder say, I've got it all. I've got a really good trade base. I get aluminium windows from China or something. It's a really good product, but I just get a really good price on it. And that's my point of difference.
Yeah.
So it does exist, but it just should be questioned at this early stage.
Yeah, correct. Because that then allows, and when the time comes, and if it is joinery, when you are getting shop drawings and sort of, the joinery package is rolling out, you've had that conversation to confirm we are getting what we're getting. I think it's more when people flow through and sign these builders up and we've signed a contract, and then you're having that hard conversation at that joinery installation when you go out there and have a look and you're extremely underwhelmed, which is way too late. I think it's just making sure you're having all these conversations pre-contract rather than post-contract.
Yeah, exactly. And then I suppose this is the starting point. So all your figures go in, you start to pull out a few items that don't match up, and that's where you start to populate your clarifications, which will then go back to the builders and start that conversation like you were saying before. Get those items clarified, understand what they've allowed for or what they haven't allowed for, which will then allow you to flow on sort of into the next stage.
Yeah, great.
Moving down, I probably should touch on before we go completely further down the page. I've got other here. Some builders will provide sort of lump sum of miscellaneous items. It's always good to get a breakdown of that other just to see what is in it. Again, even though we do look at every item, the final figure will be the item that tells you everything. You just want to make sure the allowance for everything is in that final figure.
Yeah, great. Love it. And some of that other might live further up the spreadsheet. You might unpack it a bit further and make a bit more sense of it. But yeah, like you say, ultimately all we want to do is compare apples with apples. We want our product and we want it for a certain price and in a certain budget, but we need to make sure we're going to get all our product for that price. So yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And then as you filter through the submissions, I think I mentioned last week, some builders will give you pages and pages of everything, some won't. There might be items that they've added or they've confirmed. Try and put that into your comparison somewhere. So a good example for this particular builder, they had allowed for concealed bulkhead units to each room, whereas builder 2, the lesser builder, has got ducted heating. I know concealed bulkheads to every room is going to be more expensive. So just those sort of clarifications are important because then you really want to make sure everyone has priced the same.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, you really do have to sort of unpack it. You have to build the house before you sign the contract. So yeah, great way of putting them side by side and sort of getting as much clarity as you can, like we say, pre-contract.
Yeah. And then I suppose probably lastly, when we're going through our tenders, potentially some builders have provided at the tender stage value management items for preferred suppliers. So as an example, let's say, and I'm doing this on the fly, but let's say builder 1 has allowed or has given the option to go to a different supplier for carpet and has said, you're going to save $5,000. So the key here is if that builder can do a different carpet, there's a good chance every builder can. It might not be exactly $5,000, but it might be roughly that price. So if you're going to take up any value management from one builder, it's a good idea to do circa the same figure on the other builders to then make sure that you're all comparing, again, apples to apples. So just so I can make myself clear, builder 1 has given this option. They are the most expensive builder. Even though you might be able to get builder 1 down through value management, there's a good chance you'll be able to get builder 2 down through value management too. So if you are getting, and they might not be exactly the same savings, like I said, but they'll be similar. So apply those same savings or maybe a couple grand less depending to builder 2 because you've got to compare them with the same products, if that makes sense.
Yeah, correct. I think it's just trying to keep, we keep saying it, but the apples and apples scenario, you just because Builder One's provided that alternate, you need to give the same opportunity to the others. And like you said, it's not bad to assume that if one can change from the spec product and get savings, the other builders can change from the spec product and get savings. So, so love that. Love those tips. There's no doubt following this process and this exercise is going to get you very close to the right builder and contract stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably the other thing to note, all those, let's call them scope gaps that we've found along the way, if you don't want to go back to every single builder and deal with all 4, we usually, if we've got 4 tenders, we might have 2 that are a preference and start to work with 2 rather than wasting 4 builders' time. But if you do have, say, Builder 3, I do want to work with Builder 3 or Builder 4, but they don't have the right garage doors, you can work on a spreadsheet like this and say plug your, let's say, 25,000 or the difference of down under your exclusions and upgrades and try and see exactly where they should sit. So you can use other figures from other builders. Again, every builder is different, but just to give you a high level snapshot before you choose your 2 preferred.
Yeah, great. So you can use the spreadsheet, even though they've filled it in a certain way, you can use it on your terms and play with it just to see where you think your preferred builder is, even if they've missed a couple of things.
Yeah, before you focus in on them.
Great.
And then last but not least, which we'll probably touch on in more detail once we get to contract stage, but with your preferred builders, there's other items that you really want to keep track of before you dive in and focus that time on that preferred builder, because they will ultimately impact cost when it comes to your project. So prime costs and provisional sums, if that has been noted, you should keep a tally of that and consider that. For example, Builder 1 doesn't have any costs. I should say prime costs and provisional sums that are subject to move throughout the build.
Yeah.
So we look at that as a risk. So Builder 1 has none. Builder 2 has $65,000 worth of risk. So that can swing up. It can swing down. It probably won't swing down.
Often swings up.
Exactly. And then just look at things like payment terms, your program. Is everyone building it for the same timeline? One builder might be cheaper but might take 15 months versus 12 months. What does that look like in holding costs to you? And then start date and solvency letter, which I'm sure we'll dive into more next week. But just a couple of extra items. There is no point spending the next 3 weeks with 2 preferred builders if their program is out, if their provisional sums are super high, or if they can't provide you an accountant solvency letter.
Yeah, great. I think, great additions there down the bottom to finish with. And, definitely variables to put in the big mixing pot. Obviously, people get caught up in the overall price, but these things do, they do determine outcome. Time is money. So it is important that these things are considered. And it's probably, for people doing this for the first time, could easily be things that aren't considered. You might get romanticised by the price, but diving into these things and appreciating what is allowed in these additional items is super important before choosing your builder.
Yeah, and similar to how we spoke about last week with the pre-tender, don't forget these items and forget these extra bits that will eventually come back to bite you before you embark on this stage. You don't want to get to signing a build contract and all of a sudden your builder can't provide you with an accountant solvency letter.
Yeah.
As an example. You want to have all this sort of in the works during your post-tender so that when you do get to that contract stage, you're tight and you're comfortable with exactly who you've decided to join hands with.
Fantastic. So that's episode 2 in our tender tactics. 2 of 3. So join us next week. We've got builder selection and contract.
Can't wait.
So wrapping it up. So first 2 episodes, fantastic. Setting up your tender for success. Then into post-tender and review comparison, which that was super. You probably gauged. I was pretty excited about that. That was pretty interesting. So we're 2 down. We've got the next one next week, builder selection and contract. We'll see you then, Claire.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, guys. Happy developing.